Welcome back to Mangastorian, the channel where I sit around and talk about manga. It's kind of in the name. Every week we're doing a One Piece book club where I sit down and I'm playing catch up on a series that I've never read. Long story short, I watched One Piece Red, thought the characters were kind of cool, and started reading One Piece. I've then kind of sat here and told you guys my experiences and reactions to reading One Piece. I'm not looking too deeply into the comments because I don't want to get things spoiled. I'm not looking up things on the internet to not get things spoiled. And I'm just enjoying One Piece, and I'm sitting here giving it to you guys. As it stands right now, I'm really enjoying Zorro, Luffy's really fun, Nami's one of my favorites, and we are in the middle of the Alabasta arc. Before we go into this, I just want to clarify one thing. Alabasta or Arabasta? Okay, so pronunciation has been a fun thing for me with you guys, because I read the manga and I'm not really watching anything. What that means is I don't know how it's being pronounced in the anime, and you guys love correcting me. Usopp was one thing that you corrected me for literally 2 months since we've been doing this, even though I am just saying Usopp at this point. But Alabasta and Arabasta are very fun. So basically, I called it Arabasta in a tweet. I was told that it's properly pronounced Alabasta. In the manga, it's spelled Alabasta, but people want to argue that it's Arabasta, and then some people want to argue that it's Alabasta. For the sake of this video, moving forward, I'm going to go with the spelling of it within the manga, so I will be calling it Alabasta from this point forward. Okay, so when I last left off, it was like chapter 177 or so, and basically Crocodile put them in a cage. They just got out of the cage and they decided to separate. Vivi and the entire crew were heading off to Alabasta's main city, which we're going to pretend I know how to pronounce, but we're going to keep calling it Alabasta's main city. And then Luffy stayed behind to fight against Crocodile. On top of all of this, Nico Robin, I think it's pronounced Nico Robin. Just gonna go with Nico Robin. Nico stepped forward. Should I call her Nico Robin like this full name? See, some people, you just refer to them by their full name, Nico Robin, or do you refer to her as Nico? I have a funny anecdote. So I was at a party at New York Comic-Con, and my brother and my producer decided to talk to Sean Gordon Murphy. They met him in person and they chatted with him. And they referred to him as Sean Gordon Murphy, the full name, for 30 minutes while the three of them are having drinks. And to the point where Sean Gordon Murphy was like, "Why aren't you guys just calling me Sean? It's so weird that you're using my full name." So for the sake of moving forward with our video today, I'm gonna call her Nico Robin, and someone will correct me with what I should be saying for her. Anyway, Luffy begins his battle with Crocodile. Nico Robin runs off to do whatever she does, because she like disappears for most of this entire arc, except for one key moment that she shows back up. But anyway, she runs off. Vivi and them are going off to the city, and Luffy begins his battle with Crocodile. The problem is, Luffy gets totally trashed. Crocodile's ability is to turn into sand, so Luffy can't actually hit him. And since he's attempting over and over and over, he's not making any of his attacks. Crocodile gives him, I think it's like 2 minutes to try and damage him, which Luffy can't do since he's made out of sand, and then he saps all of the moisture out of Luffy and he just kind of leaves him for dead. I think he even like buries him up to his neck or something along those lines, but basically he just destroys Luffy. So Luffy gets basically put in sand up to his neck, and then we discover Nico Robin comes back and basically saves Luffy. But Luffy's now separated. Crocodile walked off and he couldn't be beaten. Vivi and all of them have made it back to the city. There's a giant rebellion going on. The big battle's happening over there. In my notes for this section, what I wrote was, Nicole wanders off laughing. I'm assuming autocorrection kind of got me on that one. So Nicole wanders off laughing. Luffy gets schooled. Vivi trusts that Luffy can't lose, which I did enjoy that panel because she's pretty much got tears down her eyes as she says that Luffy can't lose. He's going to beat Crocodile. And then in all caps I wrote, Nico Robin saves Luffy. So that was my notes for this particular segment of the manga. Then we move to a part that I got a little confused what was going on. But basically Swan Guy, Mr. 2, shows up. He's pretending to be Usopp, and he's got the band on his arm. But that's when we discover that even with the band, Vivi realizes that it's not actually Usopp. And we discover that they all put an X on their arm underneath the band, a secondary way to understand who's who. I think I was probably just confused because like Mr. Swan's looking like everybody else and stuff like that. But Usopp ends up fighting against a dog that is actually a gun. The gun ate the fruit and turned into like I don't know what they're called, the hot dog dogs. They're like really long. And like, it makes me think of that show Cat Dog from like Nickelodeon. Remember that, where you had cat on one end and then the dog on the other end, and you always wondered how they pooped, but we never questioned it because we were kids. What I liked the most about this idea that the gun ate the fruit is even Usopp's like, that doesn't make sense. How did the gun eat the fruit? And then the villains are like, don't question it. And then we have a whole big fight going on. I actually don't remember the Usopp battle too much. I believe it was more comical. They were fighting the dog and stuff like that. What actually stood out to me, and it's in my notes, I wrote down, devil fruit a gun ate. I guess in my head that makes sense, grammatically. And then I wrote, even Usopp's confused, barely remember Usopp's fight. And then I wrote, and I remember where this was, it was in the Q&A in the back of the chapters, Sanji's left eye is apparently one of the 7 mysteries of One Piece, LOL. So you could tell what stood out better to me during that period, the Q&A portion in the back of the chapters where Uda said it's one of the 7 mysteries, which makes me wonder, what are the 6 other mysteries? Like, what are the mysteries? I was thinking about that. I'm like, okay, so the 7 mysteries are, you got Sanji's eye. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm assuming one of them is probably what D stands for in Monkey D. Luffy. So, okay, so that'll be 2. And I couldn't think of what the other 5 mysteries of One Piece possibly could be. So I'd say tell me in the comments down below, but we know I'm not reading those so I don't get spoilers. We then move on to the whole town having a big battle, and I found it kind of meh, in all honesty. I don't know if the drawing just wasn't, like, translating very well. I don't know if maybe I wasn't, like, registering everything happening. Sometimes I do have issues with manga because it's in black and white. Sometimes the fight sequences get a little blurred together for me. I'm reading at a pretty quick pace, and so sometimes I hit this, like, wall where I'm not totally translating. But I found it kind of meh, but I do think that it probably looks a lot better in the anime. My wife and I are gonna watch the Desert Princess movie, which I guess is this arc afterwards, so I'll probably have like, oh, the fight was great. But I didn't find it very interesting, the overall battle back in the town, because nobody was really off doing their own thing. This was the segment where the rebels were fighting against the various members of the Baroque works and stuff like that. We also got another image in here which kind of clarified who's who. And at this time, we had South Block with Mr. 2 Bon Clay versus Sanji. We had Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas versus Usopp and Chopper. That's the one that just resolved, because Mrs. 4 and Mr. 4 and Miss Merry Christmas had the gun dog thing. And they were over in the East Block, while over in the Alabasta Palace, we have Mr. 1, Miss Doublefinger versus Nami and Zorro. So I'm saying it like that because most of you have already read One Piece, but if you happen to be the one person who's trying to understand what's going on in One Piece with me as we're going, I'm trying to clarify a few things. But this helped me clarify who's where and who's fighting who, and why is the crew not teamed up. So next up we had Mr. 2 versus Sanji, which was hilarious, because Sanji's, I like his fighting style, all the kicks, his overall attitude, I find him funny, and he was battling against Mr. Bon Clay, and he was doing great, until Mr. Bon Clay turned into Nami. Once he turned into Nami and started flashing Sanji, Sanji's like, oh no, I can't fight you even though I know you're Mr. Bon Clay. And I was like, oh no, Sanji's weakness is beautiful women. We share that. But eventually he figures it out that there's a period in which Mr. Bon Clay, in order to hit Sanji, has to change back into Mr. Bon Clay, which is how he gets a one-up on him and ends up beating down the villain. He ends up beating Mr. 2. So Sanji's fight was fun. I really enjoyed Sanji's battle. He wins out on his. Nami's is the one that stood out to me, because up until now in the manga, we're like almost 200 chapters in at this point, she hasn't really fought. So apparently we get a little backstory. She went to Usopp and asked for him to make her a weapon. Now, first off, why would you ask Usopp? The guy has a slingshot, and so far we haven't seen him really do anything viable. I know somebody's gonna fight with me. He's done a couple of things, but when you compare him to Zorro and Sanji and Luffy, the only reason I can think of is that because he uses a slingshot, she assumed he can make her a weapon. So he makes these 3 sticks that she can use and combine in different formats. And she's running around battling against, who is she battling against? It was Miss Doublefinger. She's battling against Miss Doublefinger. And Miss Doublefinger is got the ability to create spikes anywhere on her body. So she's really messing with Nami, and Nami's got a manual made by Usopp. And she keeps doing things, but they're party favors, like make pigeons pop out, or make a small whirlwind come out, make a hot or a cold bubble, and she's freaking out. I'm gonna kill you, Usopp! What did you do? And she gets to the end of the manual, and it says, these are all party tricks. For combat techniques, flip it over. And I was like, oh, that's such a Usopp thing to do. You give her party favors in her supposed weapon. She flips it over, still isn't figuring it out because it's still a weapon that just does a bunch of party favors, but she starts connecting the weird things that the weapon can do to create these hot and cold blasts that can like throw what's her name? Double finger like through walls and stuff like that, and just kicks ass. And I was like, okay, Nami's definitely cool. Like I liked her before, but now she's a fighter as well. And I'm like, that's awesome. And that explains why whenever I've seen Nami in the future, she has this long pole arm because she gets a weapon eventually. Because I've seen art of everyone from the show and stuff like that. It's not like I'm that oblivious. I knew who Luffy, Nami, and Zorro were, though I thought it was Zolo because that's what it says in the manga. But anyway, I knew who they were. And for the record, my notes here is Mr. 2 versus Sanji. Sanji couldn't fight because he looked like Nami, LOL. I want you to know, I wrote LOL. These notes are to myself. No one sees these notes. I'm basically text messaging myself, LOL. I just now realized that. It's a message I write to myself in a chat log that only I can see. I then wrote in all caps, Nami has a weapon, LOL, combat on the reverse side. We move over, Crocodile's real plan apparently is to destroy the island. I don't get that, but you know what? I'm not gonna question it. Most big time villains in like JRPGs and stuff, I want to destroy the world. And you're like, why? Why do you want to destroy the world? Were you picked on as a child? Who hurt you, Sephiroth? We then go over to Zorro's battle against, which number is he? Mr. 1. Which, I'm going to say something for the ending where they do a slight reveal. Mr. 1 turns out to be some really crazy assassin that Zorro ended up beating. His ability is that he can create swords out of his arms and he can be as hard as steel. So Zorro can't beat him because he's as hard as steel. So Zorro decides in the middle of the fight he's going to exceed his limitations and cut through steel, which was awesome. Zorro, still the best. All right, the dude just learned how to cut steel in the middle of a battle. It went on for 3 or 4 chapters. He ended up winning. That was awesome. We then cut back to Luffy, who has now been saved by Nico Robin. Again, I'm saying her full name. Nico Robin. He gets saved by her, and he shows up at Crocodile, who's in the palace, basically taunting the king, telling the king that he wants to destroy everything. Because what they're trying to do is Crocodile's trying to get into like the library, the sacred records of Alabasta, to discover where their ultimate weapon is being kept. That's when we also, I don't know if it was here or a little bit later, but that's where Nico Robin comes in because she can read the records to tell him where the ultimate weapon is. Luffy shows up, he's got a big jug of water on his back, and he's figured it out. If Crocodile's made out of sand, if he just splashes water on him, he can fight Crocodile. So we get into the second Luffy versus Crocodile fight, and Luffy's kicking butt. He's just splashing water on his fist, hitting Crocodile, beating him down. That's awesome. I'm like, cool, we're going to take out Crocodile. The arc is supposed to go 217 chapters. Well, that could go to 217, and I'm only at like 195. How long is this fight? For a minute there, I thought it'd be a Dragon Ball fight where it just goes forever. And you're just like, are we going to spend 9 chapters yelling? Okay. But it wasn't, because Luffy gets his butt kicked a second time. I can't remember why or how, but I believe he just gets distracted. And then Crocodile grabs him by the throat, drains all the water out of his body again, calls him a mummified version. I even wrote Luffy mummified again, throws him down. Luffy's defeated for the second time. And Crocodile and Nico Robin go into the library to try and read the records to find out where the ultimate weapon is located. While this is going on, Vivi and the crew are defeating all the Baroque Works members, and Vivi's trying to calm down the rebellion, because the rebellion, during all of this, is trying to fight against the castle guards and random members of Baroque Works, I think, but there's like a big battle happening in the middle of the city, because the rebellion thinks that the king stole their water and they're finally fed up with it. And Vivi's trying to tell the rebellion that that is not the case, that this is all being manipulated by Baroque Works, and you don't realize that they're actually here. And so she's doing all of this. And then I wrote in my notes, teamwork makes the dream work, as everyone throws them up the tower. So, again, I'm writing these notes to myself. I don't know why I'm not more, descriptive over what I'd like to say. What they realize is Crocodile says that the plan isn't going to work. But in order to ensure that the main city of Alabasta is destroyed, there is somebody in the town that is going to blow up the main square and like 3 miles around it or something like that, like a radius. So now that Zorro, Nami, Usopp, Karoo the penguin or the rooster or the chicken or whatever they're riding, they're all done with their fights. They've teamed up with Vivi, and Vivi's like, hey, we got to find this person that's going to blow up the center square. And they've got 3 minutes or like 5 minutes, or there's a set timer going on. And they discover that the person is at the top of the tower in the middle of the square. So in order to get Vivi up there so that she can stop everything, they do this thing where it's like Zorro is up so high in the tower, and Sanji's so high in the tower, and Usopp and everyone's at the bottom. So they keep throwing her up with Karoo so that she can get boosted to the top of the tower, and then use her awesome weapons to like cut the what is it called? It's a rope. It goes to a bomb. It hisses. It's in cartoons, and it's like diffused. That's the word. She goes up there, she breaks it. I wrote down in my notes, in all caps, Vivi did it! Again, I'm writing this to myself. I'm realizing how pathetic this is. She breaks it, and then we go back to the fight with Luffy and Crocodile. Luffy's back for a second round. This time, Luffy doesn't have water, but he's clobbering Crocodile. And we discover that he has got blood. He's cut himself, or he's been cut by Crocodile. It's one of the two, but he's got blood that he's using to solidify the punches and beat down Crocodile. Crocodile hits him with a little bit of poison. Luffy is doing this battle to save the king. And honestly, I even wrote it here, I found the fight a little kind of meh. Like, after all this buildup to the final battle against Crocodile, once Luffy figured out how to hit him, pretty much beat him pretty quickly. This is one of those fights that's probably a lot better in the anime, but it was just a lot of like, you know, gum cannon, gum this, and he just decimated him and beat him, and then he collapsed, and the king helped him deal with the poison that had been put into his system. The entire building ends up crumbling around them, and in his last-ditch effort of strength, Luffy got the king out. And then he falls down, and he collapses. He's going to be okay. I believe at this point the king gave him the antidote, or they've said they're getting him the antidote. They've not left it wondering if Luffy's going to be okay. But I just remember the panel, and I wish I could remember what he said, but the king's like, you saved me, and he's just got this big grin on his face, and he's like, I did it for Vivi, or I did it to save you, or it's okay, or something along those lines. But the panel just really stood out to me, the drawing of Luffy's smile at the end of the entire fight, where he's been poisoned, he's bleeding, he's been mummified, and he's just like, and then he passes out. Which I wrote here was a great finale for the fight for me, because the fight itself just was, and I get because it's the third fight, like at this point, if you think about a character like Crocodile, whose whole thing is you can't touch him because he can turn into sand, he probably isn't that good of a fighter. Like, his whole thing is you can't touch him. So that's probably why Luffy was able to beat him once he could just connect every one of his hits. Plus, Luffy's OP as hell at this point, especially. I mean, he's been OP as hell for all 200 and something chapters at this point, but he's just OP as hell on this fight because once he can connect the hits, it's just going crazy. It reminds me of Spider-Man, who always is like, oh, I rely on my spider sense, so when he doesn't have it, he gets his butt kicked no matter what. So I feel like that's kind of what happened with Crocodile. Oh, I can't just turn into sand and get rid of people? Crap. So at this point, the story's fights have resolved. The rebellion is aware of what's going on. They've stopped the bomb. I believe there was a secondary tier where the bomb was going to explode anyway, but that was also resolved. I don't remember exactly what happened with that. I think there was like a fake out that someone was going to die. I think it was Inagram. But anyway, he's at the ending, so it doesn't even matter, like the fake outs or whatever. Gonna get a kick out of this. The girl that looks like Zorro's childhood friend, who I have literally been referring to as the girl that looks like Kunia at this whole time, and I haven't known her name. She pops up because Smoker and her are there, and they're aware of what happened. And she pops up, and in my head, I'm like, it's the girl that looks like Kunia, who's the second in command to Smoker, that Zorro doesn't want to fight because she looks like his childhood friend. And my thought process was, I should probably learn her name. But I didn't want to Google her, just in case me calling her the girl that looks like Kunia is actually accurate, and I get spoiled. So I didn't want to Google it. This whole chapter, she's being called Tashigi? I think it's Tashigi is how you pronounce it. I didn't click that was her. She's literally being called Tashigi, and I'm reading this. And in my head, I'm calling her the girl that looks like Kunia until we get to the ending where it's literally her and Smoker, and he says it, and I'm like, oh shit, that's her name. So this was around chapter like 212, and since they were introduced back in like 95, I've officially gone like 120 chapters without knowing her name, and she has been popping up a lot. Then I got faked out, and then I got happy, and then I got faked out again. Okay, Vivi has become one of my favorite characters. So when they started leading to the direction of everyone's eating, everyone's happy, the king is thanking Luffy, I'm like, all right, cool, they're all gonna load up, Vivi's on the adventure, we've got the crew. So we go over there, and then they're leaving without Vivi. And I'm writing to my friend, Vivi's leaving the crew? I'm so sad. Like, I really started to like her. But then the chapter states that they're gonna meet up with her in a little bit. That, oh, she has an option, she can join the crew. I'm like, oh, cool, Vivi's gonna join the crew. So we go through a couple of chapters where they get on the boat, they ride off the boat, Mr. Bon Clay showed back up, sacrifices himself. I think his ship went down with him, but they didn't confirm his death, but they acted like he died. So I'm a little sad, because he showed up to save their boat because he considered them friends. Even though they fought, they were friends from all the way back in like chapter 40. Also, you guys keep saying read the cover stories. Some of those don't make any sense. I'm not gonna lie. Django's Dance Fever Club Island I thought was pointless. Only to have Django on one of the boats trying to stop the crew. What? Like, I got the other one where it was Clown Guy, whatever Clown Guy's name, he teamed up with the other girl and they showed up. Okay, cool, that was cool. And then we just started watching Django's Dance Island and I'm like, okay, well, this one isn't gonna mean anything. But I was paying attention to what was going on with Django's Dance Island, and now he's on a boat, and they're like, hey, Mr. Hypnotist, how are you here? And I'm like, how are you here? Did you join the Navy? What the hell's even happening? Did I miss one of the covers? He's here now. Mr. Bon Clay distracts them, seemingly gets killed because he considers them friends and he goes down for them because he's like, why are you going back to the island? And they're like, we have to go back for a friend. So he stays, he's the distraction. The Navy fights and blows up his ship. I think he's dead at this point, but who the hell knows anymore? And they go back to the island where Vivi is giving like this big speech to the entire area. And they assume she's gonna leave. Like they set it all up like she's going to leave. She's going to join the crew. And I'm like, yeah, Vivi's gonna join the crew. We're gonna get on the boat. We're gonna sail off. And then she doesn't. She says goodbye. And I'm like, no. And I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about this farewell. It was great. It was so perfect because she like calls out that she wants them to consider her a shipmate if they all meet again. And I'm like, okay, that's a cool ending. But they didn't reply. And she was getting teary-eyed. And I'm like, oh no, they're doing it because of the Navy. And then they hold up the arm, and they've all got the X. And that's like, yes! She saw it, she's a shipmate, even though she's gonna be a princess now and stay on the island. And I'm like, we lost Vivi. I'm sad. I'm super sad. And then Nico Robin walks out of the cabin, and I'm like, oh yeah, she was gonna join. Yay! It was awesome. I loved it. It was a great arc. I loved the fact that we spent 100 chapters building up to this, getting to this point. Luffy had an incredible character arc during this whole sequence. I loved it. I feel like they didn't do him proper justice in the first 100 chapters. He was really just the guy to punch things. But these last 100 chapters leading up to him really wanted to go back and get Vivi. I get it. I get what's going on with him. And I get he's the humorist. He doesn't get what's going on. But when you need him to, he steps up to be the friend or he figures out the fight. Like the blood to fight Crocodile. Like, he can figure it out, but we need a comical character to kind of play against the seriousness of Zorro, Sanji. I wouldn't say Nami's a serious character, but Usopp is definitely not a serious character. Oh, and if you're wondering, during all of this, Tony Tono Chopper was there. He was working with Usopp. I didn't mention him once. He was working with Usopp, and then he was the one that healed the whole crew up because he's the doctor. But he didn't have too many big moments after he was used as a distraction to Mr. Prince, so... I did not forget him, okay? He's there. He's running around. He's doing reindeer things. Anyway, I really enjoyed the last 100 chapters leading up to this. Vivi joined the crew. I had a blast with her on the crew, even though she didn't really do anything. I liked Nami getting really close to Vivi, so Nami was sad when Vivi wasn't rejoining the crew because that was her friend. That was a touching moment. Luffy wanting to go back to pick her up. It's like the last 100 chapters, and it was so sweet because it felt like the series ended. Like, it felt like this could be the ending. When we were getting to this, I was like, what the hell else do they have to do? They saved Alabasta. And I was like, oh yeah, the One Piece. Like, right. We're not here for the rebellion. We're going for the One Piece. I wasn't reminded of the One Piece. I was reminded of Luffy's goal to be the king of the pirates. I get that. Like, I was reminded of that moment. But I wasn't reminded of the One Piece. And I really liked the way they did that. Because this didn't feel like a stopping off point. It didn't feel like somewhere that we just a side quest. It felt like the main story. And that's what I really enjoyed, because it wasn't like every chapter they're like, we got to go save the rebellion and then get to the One Piece. It was literally just, here's the rebellion. We'll get back to that later. But here's the rebellion and we got to help Vivi. So I loved this and I am probably hooked. Also, I feel slightly accomplished to have exceeded 200 chapters in a manga that, I won't lie, I thought I was going to get like 20 and never really read again. And part of that is from you guys. Part of it is just me simply enjoying this. When we made that first video, I wasn't lying when I said if I drop off, I'll let you know why. Because with so many chapters, I assumed I was going to get bored. Like, I just assumed it. I have really bad ADD if you haven't figured that out from these videos. So my assumption was I would get so far into it and I would just get distracted and then not come back. The amount of times that I got distracted in Demon Slayer watching the anime, when they would have the slow moment, it'd be like, oh, cool, the fight's over. What's he gonna do now? A month later, I'd start the anime back up because I'd forget I was watching it. Right now, I have a book on my Kindle right here. It's an Assassin's Creed book that I'm doing for one of the other channels. And I'm at the last 2 chapters and I keep forgetting to finish it. So my assumption was I was going to fall off. But I'm having so much fun reading One Piece, and your guys' reaction has been incredible, and thank you so much, because I'm just having so much fun making these videos. So I have no theories this time. I got to the end of what's considered the arc, which is the end of chapter 217, which just leaves off with Nico Robin joining the team. So we're back on the boat. Nico Robin's on the team. The bounties are now bigger for Luffy and Zorro, so it's implied that this is going to get worse for them with the Navy, and that's where we are. I know you guys are going to hate me for it, but the only way to get this correct, nope, that's Reverse Mountain. That was, so the next one, I'm in the Sky Island Saga. So Jaya Arc and Skypiea. Those are the ones I have next. And Skypiea goes until 302. So that's where we're going to. We got to get to 302 next. So the next chapter will be Jaya, which ends at 236. I'll do that video, and then Skypiea I'm probably going to break into 2 as well, because that's like 60 chapters, so we'll have to do something there. But anyway, guys, thank you so much. I'm actually going to be bringing my wife. She watched the East Blue movie, which kind of did a quick recap of the characters. We're going to watch the Alabasta arc movie, and then when One Piece Red comes out, I'm going to have her watch that, and then we're going to do a video to see what she thinks, and if that converted her to want to read it, if she read manga. She doesn't read manga, she reads light novels. So, but to see what she thinks about it, and I thought it'd be a fun video to see what you guys think about her opinions on One Piece as another person who knows nothing about it. But anyway, this video has gone super long, as all my One Piece videos do. Thank you so much for your continued support. If you like this video, please give it a like, subscribe. We will be continuing these. We're still aiming for 1 a week. And I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.